so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take about a minute and a half to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm sincerely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. So if you've been looking for a way to easily get organic superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, like I was doing before I found Purium, I highly recommend going to positivehead.com/transformation and checking out the videos and interviews there where I dive deeply into discussions explaining why I take these products every day. And should you ultimately end up on iShopPurium.com to purchase any of their 50 plus amazing superfood products, be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share, I'm very excited to have my dear friend Samantha Lotus here with me on the show. Samantha specializes in lifestyle alchemy and reality architecture, which uses a multidisciplinary framework to help people deconstruct their identities and lives and essentially re-architect their reality to be in alignment with their highest potential. Hello, Sam. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this for quite some time. Sam and I met originally at the Superhero Academy and Vision Festival, Magical Shindig. You guys have heard me talk about it multiple times over the last year. And yeah, Sam is just such a bright, shining light. And we've been talking about doing this for quite some time. And what a way to kick off the new year. As we're recording here, it's the 2nd of January, 2019. So really, really excited to have my first Soul Share that I'm recording, with you. So thank you for showing up in my 2019.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's nothing I would rather do right now than be here with you, sharing to all these positive heads.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm going to start off where I always start off. Very predictable opening question and ending question. And the opening question is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
My passion is truly to bring love, empowerment, and hope, and peace, and excitement, and passion to the planet to truly empower each and every individual to reclaim their health and their happiness and their freedom, and to share their unique gifts with the world, to help us reconnect, to remember who we truly are, and to step into the next iteration of this evolution of the planet together as a collective co-creation. Make this world a better place.
Oh man, I think we went 11 floors, but we're going to let it slide because it was so good.
Thanks. I'll take it. I pressed pause on the elevator. I was like, girl, we're going to stop for a sec.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
So you can hear me out.
Emergency button. I got more to say. You're not getting off until I'm done. So why don't you start? You have a fascinating, one of the things I remember from Superhero Academy, and for those of you who haven't heard, and I've talked about this multiple times over the last year, but I even did a recap episode last, March, I think, after I got back from Superhero Academy and Envision Festival, and it was just this incredible gathering of 111 or so of us, or somewhere around there, people in Costa Rica on Permaculture Hub, Punta Mona, before we spent 3-4 days, I think it was, before going over to Envision Festival. And it was such a magical gathering of souls connecting, and truly a bunch of superheroes coming together, reconnecting, in this magical place, way off the grid. We had to take a boat to get there. And it was so, so cool. And, Sam, I remember you getting up and giving us some insight into your own spiritual journey, which led you to being there and being a key part of helping to produce it and make it happen and everything like that. And wow, I remember your story was so impactful. So I would love to hear, it's another kind of typical place I like to start with these soul shares is hearing the background, the story that led my guests to being, who and what they are and how they're showing up in the world. And yeah, if you would take a few minutes to give us some insight into your journey, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was a lot of fun chatting with Charles Eisenstein and having him pull me up and share my story.
Yeah. He was on the show recently too, like a couple months ago. So
what a good dude. Yeah. So the start of it was truly where I believe a lot of people start, is being sick, stressed, diseased, and depressed or oppressed. And I grew up just with a lot of challenges, with parents that were a little nuts, and standard American diet, standard American lifestyle, stress and scarcity, and just growing up in a state where it seemed as if just consumed by darkness. And I know that I had a lot of inner darkness, and growing up just constantly being faced with chronic illness, and then going in and out of mood disorders or depression, and ended up getting really, really sick, where every single system in my body started to shut down. I lost my moon cycle for 7 years, and I developed Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism, and then my immune system was just so low, and I ended up picking up a parasite or something while traveling and going through different traumas. And it ended up turning into a systemic blood infection, which turned into a cancerous blood infection. And I nearly died about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And I faced a situation where I thought I was on my deathbed, and I was so cold. There felt like there was like lightning shooting through every single cell in my body. And I called my best friend, and I was crying, and I'm like, I think I'm dying. And if I die, this is like, please, this is what I want you to tell my family, and you can take my things. And going through that conversation, and I called the ambulance, and I was waiting for the ambulance, and I had this, that moment that people say when you almost die, you kind of meet God, and I had that experience, and it wasn't a man in the sky kind of God, but it was more myself, my higher self, the quantum God, source energy. And I heard myself speaking to myself, saying, like, Sam, you have an opportunity right now. You can die. This can be it for you, or you can live. But truly, you brought yourself to this place because subconsciously you wanted to die. You had been asking for this. You had been asking to not live anymore. You didn't want to be here. And so you got what you asked for. And now you have the opportunity. Is this what you want? And that broke me. That shook me awake. And I panicked. I went into a state of panic of, I can't die. I'm 26 years old. There's so much I have to do. And it was very clear, well, if I want to live, who do I need to become to truly feel like I want to be a part of this planet? And what would I have to do? And how would my life need to change? And I just had a full quantum download of all of the different things that I could no longer be and do and think and say and act, and who I needed to evolve into to feel like I deserved to be on this planet and to share my message and my gifts with the world. And so I went to the hospital. They came, they took my vitals. It wasn't good, but then I survived. And the next morning I woke up and I had a different energetic, and I started to get better. All of my systems started to heal over the next year and a half. And then it brought me to this place of where I am now, which is a completely different place than when I was a few years ago.
Wow. That's a crazy journey to go through, to go from, not wanting to live to manifesting that, to then in the 11th hour, like, oh, hold on, I think I want to stay, like, let me reverse this. And then to have it now, how quickly did you heal once you had that experience, with your higher self or, source or whatever you want to refer to it as? What did you, how quickly was your turnaround?
Yeah, it was really interesting because it wasn't like I was extremely depressed and being like, oh, I don't want to live. It was very subconscious. I was happy. I had everything. Life was great. But underneath, it was like the deeper pains of, abandonment from my father, or all of these different things that just contributed to me feeling like I didn't actually deserve to be loved or to be here. Right. So it's like very subconscious. But when I made that decision, everything changed. Like the synchronicities, meeting all of the right people, meeting tribe, having everything like I really desired just manifest. And it was like this, I stepped into this new reality. And that was really what I call my transitionary into my alchemist. And my body started to heal almost immediately. And not all of the systems, but I had energy again. I could get up. My stomach wasn't always bloated. I started to notice that I didn't need to sleep, 5-hour naps plus 8 hours a night. And within the next year, my thyroid started to heal. My levels were going up. Within 2 years, I regained my menstrual cycle. And now 4 years later, apart from a little bit of digestive issues when I'm not processing my emotions, I'm completely healed.
Wow.
And I never took medications like I was prescribed. I never did the chemotherapy like I was harshly recommended. I didn't do any of the allopathic medical route. I treated myself holistically, mind, body, and spirit.
Wow. So they were pushing hard for you to do all that, and you, that's a tough one for people. I got to imagine, you know what I mean? When you have this professional, this expert telling you, no, this is the way we can navigate through this. You have to. This is the only way, or you're going to die, and your blood is not going to be on my hands because I told you. Like, there was so much pressure, and my best friend and the person I was seeing are both doctors as well. And my best friend stopped talking to me. She said, I will not let you kill yourself if you don't do the chemo and that. Wow.
We're not friends. And so I was abandoned by some of my closest friends. My family didn't understand. I felt so alone going through this. It was really, really challenging. Yeah. It allowed me to empathize with my now clients, because there's so much pressure and misconstrued understanding around what it is to truly heal.
Wow. How did you sort of arrive at that, at that place of trusting that was the process you needed to go through? Because it sounds like you had as you said, sort of a traditional upbringing, standard American diet. Had you, during this process, been having, had you already started exploring concepts out of the box of, ordinary reality as we've been taught in Western society? Or did you have this awakening experience, this experience connecting with, your higher self or source, and then it was like, hold on, I have a whole new sense of what's going on here?
I was very fortunate. I was studying to be a naturopath at the time. I had been in the holistic world for quite a while. Ever since I was a little girl, I was extremely connected to source and to higher consciousness. My great grandma was a medicine woman, and my grandfather was very spiritual, but that was all suppressed within me because nobody else thought the things that I thought. And so I thought I was the only person on the planet that knew about spirituality And yet
Right.
that it was like this massive emergence, this awakening within me of everything you've always known as a little girl, all of those things, all of the things you've believed, that is the truth. Like that is your truth. And that is what you fully need to embody. And so I realized now I had to get sick to be able to do the work that I do now. I had to fully embody the state of sick, stress, disease, and depressed and oppression to really be able to empathize and understand and to be able to transmute that within myself. So it's experiential that I'm sharing with the people that I work with. Wow.
Now, I know you and I have talked a little bit about plant medicines and, speaking of natural ways to expand consciousness and promote healing. Was that a part, utilizing, plant medicines, entheogens, was that a part of your healing process?
Yes, absolutely.
Or was that later?
Absolutely. Okay. Even, before getting really sick as I was a teenager, working with, I wouldn't have called it working with at the time, but playing with medicinal mushrooms, or more so magical mushrooms, that really opened me up to the quantum world again, and to the fact that everything is energy and we're all interconnected. And so that helped. And then afterwards, 2 years ago when I started working with ayahuasca, that was really what finalized, I would say, and truly catalyzed the deepest DNA reconstruction and the total clearing. Because what I realized is, even though I was doing well 2 years ago, there was still a lot of pain and broken codes and old patterns that were just so buried within my cells, my cellular imprint. And so working with ayahuasca allowed me to go in and actually restructure and reconstruct my genetic code and do the intense purging, the intense purging that I needed to do. So yes, absolutely. Wow. I don't know that I would be here in this place had I not worked with plant medicines.
Wow. Yeah, it's been a powerful part of my own journey. And I know some of the listeners, I know I get contact sometimes from people who are like, very curious and have questions about them, or others, of course, who've already been down that path or continuing to go down that path. And, it's not necessarily the path for everyone, but it certainly can be kind of, okay, let's take the fast track to expanding consciousness awareness, and it's definitely been one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's not always easy, but certainly has been a powerful teacher in my own life.
Yeah, I will say that my experiences with toad medicine, 5-MeO, or ayahuasca was the most torturous and painful and traumatic experience of my life. And at the same time, it was the most transformative and the most beautiful and the most powerful. And so if anyone's being called to that medicine, just know it is not a walk in the park. And yet, it's a very, very potent way to catalyze the deep deconditioning and deconstructing and allowing space for the rebirthing to happen.
Yeah. Wow. So I did 5-MeO not so long ago and did a episode on it afterwards. And that was quite the intense experience. I found for myself, I was a little more challenging. I know, but some people have a really a challenging time with 5-MeO as well. Did you, what was your sort of difference?
Well, 5-MeO, I did it before ayahuasca. And what was really interesting was it showed me all of my main takeaway was from toad medicine coming back into my body. I just saw that the entire left side of my body was black. It's tight. It was black. It was really my feminine rejection. I hated that I was a woman. I had a lot of misogyny and patriarchy patterns within myself. And the whole entire left side of my body my feminine side was just like corrupt and black and, just kind of dead. And it showed me that was my work, that it was like this feminine awakening, this feminine expansion, this acceptance of who I am engendered and why I was that way. And, I went back 10,000 years and saw all of the different things that contributed to that closing off and how my body was a representation of the world and what the world is being reflected in.
Wow.
And so that was interesting, but it didn't really, it kind of left me afterwards. I'm like, well, what do I do with that? where ayahuasca was
I need
a little
to go
bit.
get a dress.
I know. I'm like, I don't know.
Go dress shopping.
Okay, I love myself, and but ayahuasca was more. It gave me the full guidebook to my life and to the past and to the present and to the future. So I found it a little bit more helpful for me in guiding me forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. That sounds instantly intriguing. You had a 10,000 year view of the evolution of our species.
Well, yes. And my evolution, ayahuasca offered me, because she went in and she said, "Oh, you believe that being a woman is weak, and you believe that the feminine is weak. I'm going to show you. You're going to live through 10,000 years of your own incarnations, and every single lifetime you've been a woman." And so I had to be birthed. I had to live my life as a woman and go through what women went through in all of those years. I had to become pregnant and give birth and be born and go through that over 10,000 years. And all of that cellular memory is now imprinted in my hips. And it was like this remembering, like that's there. And if you ever believe, you will never again falsely believe that being a woman is weak or the feminine energy is weak. And so I had to go through that. And it was, it was a lot.
You got to go through that.
I got to go through that. I'm so grateful to go through that. Yeah. The indestructible feminine is what emerged. Just the power that is the feminine energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think people are realizing that more and more too, that I saw a quote the other day, and I can't remember who it was by or whatever, but it's just stuck out in my head. And just to paraphrase, it was the feminine will save the world. That's, in some way, I believe, and of course you hear that we're going into this new age where the feminine is reclaiming its rightful place on the world stage, and its power in that sort of is what that energy should be leading the charge in a sense as we move into this more spirit centric, connected, creative world. I've heard it said that when we go through these 13,000 year cycles, right, where for the last 13,000 years it's been the masculine. When we separate from source, the masculine takes over and is sort of running the show. We got to survive. We have to, we're cut off from source. And then, that's sort of the game that we play, that source plays, is connection, separation, unity, separation. And we, to have that contrast, right? And so for the last 13,000 years, we've been in this separation cycle, and that therefore the masculine has dominated, as it always does during those separation cycles. And now we're coming into the cycle of unification again. Everyone's waking up and remembering we're all connected and one, and and that's now a time for the feminine to step back into a leadership role.
Yeah, and the best way that the feminine can really express and be and flow and have that creative energy is by being held by the masculine. And so we always do need one another. And I think that's something that's not happening as much right now. It's it's going polarized, and we're seeing a little bit of toxic femininity as well with some of the feminist movements and all of that. I don't want to get too much into that, but we really need each other. The masculine structure and the holding and the container, and the feminine flow and the healing and unification. Yeah, truly. Yeah, within ourselves as well, within our own autonomous self, within our relationships, within all of the energetics of the world, and recognizing that we need to be the creators of that, and we need to hold that within ourselves and emanate that outwards. Yeah.
So just to clarify on something, because I'm curious, you said you lived 10,000 years. So did you have a time displacement experience where you fully lived those lives during your Aya trip, during your journey? Or was it more I'm giving you snapshots of it? Or did you come out and say, okay, that ayahuasca journey actually felt like 10,000 years to me?
Well, the 10,000 years of rebirthing was like a washing machine. It was boom, 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 boom,
okay, that's what I figured. That's what I figured you meant.
Intense. But I did live out 3 lifetimes. And
what
with one of my, the other founder of Superhero Academy and the Freedom Culture Mastermind, Mark Angelo, we had quite a lot of past lives. He was on the show a while back. Yeah, he was on the show, and he was on the show a while back. And definitely a life partner as well. And we lived 3 lives together in the past that I remembered or that I lived, and I got to live out those lives in my journey. And then
as also, in live them out, here's
we
day one,
we were
day
a king
two,
and a queen. We were a king and a queen, leading this kingdom and bringing them from war into prosperity. And then we were Viking warriors that led a war again, and it was in Valhalla. Very interesting, very similar to what we're doing right now in this lifetime.
Well, yeah, Valhalla is like his project that we talked about
we're on here in Montreal building as well, and so and then we lived a life as elephants, which is really, really interesting. I'm very connected to elephants, and I was an elephant.
Me too.
Really?
Me too. Yes,
wow.
yes. I feel very connected to Ganesh.
Maybe that's the connection.
We probably were. So
that was really cool getting to experience that.
Yeah, that's funny. I just had a conversation less than 24 hours ago about knowing in the future that I sit across from some of the most powerful people on the world stage, and just feeling and knowing that intuitively, and sort of having this vision of how it goes down, and sitting across from people who aren't always really conscious yet or awake, and knowing that part of my journey is to help to wake them up, right? And so sitting across from them, and let's say some sort of a business dealing, and I've always had this vision, thinking of like a Trump-like character, or just to use him as an example, this powerful figure who's still very in their ego and not aware, and sitting across from them saying, okay, before we talk about whatever our business dealings are today, or whatever we're here to talk about, first I want to talk about the elephant in the room. And of course they'll look at me puzzled, and say, what are you talking about? And I'll say, well, the elephant in the room is there's only one of us in the room. And until we discuss what I mean surrounding that and the ultimate truth that is, I am you, you are me, the consciousness that animates my form is the same consciousness that animates your form. Here's how the ultimate nature of reality works. Until we cover that foundational truth and knowing, there's nothing else to talk about. And granted, they may not accept it all in that moment, but I'm going to get it out in that way, talking about the elephant in the room. And then we'll go on to talk and let that seed do its thing, in their consciousness, in its own timing. And so literally within 24 hours, like 16 hours ago, I was telling this to someone, the elephant in the room, and having like a really strong connection to Ganesh, and, having some crazy magical stories surrounding that archetype and avatar. So
if you need a partner for that conversation, I nominate myself.
Yes, you're in.
I will support, please.
So cool. So fun. So let's talk about what the work that you do and what you sort of specialize in helping others to do. And you use this word alchemy, and I love that word. I love, I've said before, spiritual alchemy to me is the art of sifting and shifting perspectives until love emerges. Just like something that came to me a while back, and how I reference alchemy. It's all about perspective shifting, and I'd love to hear what is alchemy of reality to you?
Yeah, the alchemy. Well, alchemy itself, not a lot of people know what alchemy is. And alchemy is one of the original medicines, one of the original magic. It's the transmutation or the transformation of, essentially in the physical world, a dense metal into gold. But that's actually just a representation of density into something that transform into something very, very precious. And so, as a lifestyle alchemist, taking your life and finding where the density is and to transform that to help evolve into the light. And in reality alchemy is, understanding that you are living from the perspective of your own reality, of the constructs and the systems and the structures of that reality contribute to you and your personal identity. And when I can take somebody and get them to understand, to observe their reality, which is the first principle of alchemy, observation, to observe and understand their own reality, and then to help them deconstruct that. So to really focus on that dense metal, the density of it, to deconstruct it, to melt it down, and to transmute it or to transform it into gold, being whatever it is that is their highest vision, their highest excitement, their highest purpose, their highest potential. And so getting people to become and to realize, not to become, but to realize, to remember, to be empowered in the knowingness that they are the alchemist of their life. They are the alchemist of their reality. Yeah. And then from that place, awakening an army of alchemists. If we're all operating from alchemy, well, then what can we create in the world? How can we co-create a collective reality from a place of recognizing that we are both the creators and the creation of our lives and of this reality? And so when we're bringing in the new paradigm, when we're bringing in the evolution, the next iteration of our world, well, it's not just an idea. We actually get to co-create that. And that needs to come from that personal place of being empowered within our own alchemical medicines and powers.
I love that. Yeah, it's I sometimes compare this to, a lot of times in people's life story or life path has led them to their own set of challenges, their lump of coal, if you will. And it's like, and if they continue to focus on it as that lump of coal, it remains as a lump of coal. Or we can start looking at it from the perspective of, why is this happening for me? Not to me. What is the gift hiding behind the lump of coal? And you find the way to then transmute it into the diamond, right? And of course, The diamond it comes from lots of pressure being, put on coal or what have you, and it ultimately turns into this beautiful, precious object. And so it's the same kind of thing, like, when you start understanding all of your challenges, your challenge of almost dying, as you said, you needed to go through that in order to now be helping people in the way that you are, because there's no substituting having firsthand experience. Like, if I'm going to teach someone how to play guitar, I probably want to have learned guitar. If I'm going to teach someone, not that I couldn't theoretically talk about it, but it's a whole different thing when you've had firsthand experience going through something. And it's such a powerful path to sign up for, and such a brave path to sign up for.
Yeah. I love thinking about that, like the challenge, and your challenge is really your opportunity. Like, and if you take it at the meta level of, well, why do we even exist, right? Why did consciousness split from itself? Well, it split from itself through manifestation to recognize itself through comparison and contrasting and mirroring. Well, contrast and comparison can be the thief of all joy, but it can also give you a beautiful opportunity to recognize yourself through that comparison. And so I realized why I almost died. I truly, what came through was I was so ungrateful. I have everything. I'm a tall, blonde, affluent white woman. Like, what do I not have in my life? Like, that's right. It's just the truth. And yet
with lots of intelligence, everything going for you.
Thank you. And, I was athletic and I had all the things. I had a family that did love me, and even though they were a little nuts, but then I just realized it was not enoughness. Like, the disease of not enoughness corrupted every single part of me. And my life isn't good. Oh, this, oh, that. And I just realized, through almost dying, I got to be infused with the ultimate infinite gratitude that I got to live. And so that's a big part of my practice every single day, waking up and being so grateful to recognize that the present, this life, is such a gift, and that we need to really appreciate it in every single moment. And so gratitude and appreciation really came through for me through that contrast and through that challenge, which is why I do believe it was the greatest gift that I'd ever been given.
Right. So now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. You mentioned earlier, you said, you mentioned being the creator and creation. Can you expand on that? Yeah. It's such a fun concept. So, recognizing that, in another analogy, we're the artist and also the canvas. Being the creator and the creation is
recognizing that we are gods and goddesses. We, through our subconscious, through our mind, through our visualization, through our perceptions, through our beliefs and our thoughts and our patternings, we are creating our life. And then what is our life? Well, our life is our creation. And so everything that we do, everything that we experience, all of our thoughts, those are being, through a feedback loop, created through ourselves. And this reality, well, it's being created through the collective. And then it's also recreating the collective. And so truly being empowered to realize that you're the creator in the creation is to take back your power, to realize that it's not somebody else. You're not a victim. It's truly like recognizing that connection, like you said, the elephant, that we are all one and we are all manifestations of creation, of source, and that we are also contributing to that source. And so, yeah, I don't know if that explains it well, but
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah. It's like we're the creator and created rolled into one. We're both simultaneously.
There's no separation, just like the chicken and the egg. Not one did not come before the other. It's the silliest question. That's taking trying to understand something in a linear form when it's not linear. They both existed at the same time. Just there's no separation between that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people get really caught up in thinking, of course, that if it's happening to you in some way, then that introduces the idea of victimhood. And, a lot of times, Sam, people really love these concepts and it gets tricky. I mean, one of the things I found the stickiest things to talk about on this show is the idea of victimhood, because people love the idea of creating their own reality and they're one with the creator until there's something that really, ugly happens, right? And
rape. We'll take the rape conversation, because this is a big one, right? Like when we say, well,
big one.
We create it and there's no victimhood. Well, they say, well, what about somebody that was murdered? What about somebody that was raped? And this is such a challenging conversation, because I truly empathize with that. How could it be so horrible? Like, how could we even imagine that somebody would create that? And then if we are going to truly take on the role of creator and creation and being one with source and and consciousness and all of what that encompasses, it's potentially, something inside of us, our soul needed to experience that for some reason. And maybe in our incarnation, in the past incarnation, we ended up raping someone. Now in this one, we needed to be, I don't know. And I don't really want to go there in that, because it is a very tricky situation. And yet, if you are raped, you can take on the victim role and let that ruin the rest of your life and play out over and over and over. Or you can see it as an opportunity to say, wow, okay, I now have an opportunity to create a new reality, and to be so empowered to go from the lowest of low, the darkest of pains, to say, even though this happened to me, I am going to be the victor. I am going to be the heroine. I am going to create a new reality where I can forgive and heal and recreate myself, even though that happened. And that is true transformation and true power.
Yeah, it's making your mess your message. It's another example of kind of, in a sense, a different. It's challenging in a different way than what you went through with the sickness stuff, right? It's like, you can come out of that. You could have sort of surrendered to that ultimately, and it ended you, or come out of it and say, okay, I'm going to be stronger because of it. And I think the people who have, like you said, we won't get into all the ins and outs and logistically of how someone creates something that's tragic and very, challenging in their life. But if you can, take that experience and say, okay, I'm going to use this to only make me stronger. This idea of smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor. I could throw my hands up and let the ship go down, or I can become better because of it. And that is, anyone who has signed up for those super challenging experiences, it's like they're actually, from my perspective, like the bravest, boldest souls that there are, right? I mean, to be that brave to actually go down that path, and to, and I think for a lot of times they sign up for it, and then it gets the better of them, right? And it ends up sort of destroying them. But there's also those who come out the other side and end up helping others and become even more because of it. And that's really what we hope to, see more of for anyone out there listening who has struggled with something really tragic and difficult beyond anything I can relate to having had happen to me. It's like, I would just say, dig down deep and realize that there's something here. There's an opportunity in disguise to turn that into the gold or the diamond, right?
Yeah. And, we can share this or not, but I'll share a really personal story that was really challenging. And I held victimhood for a long time over this. I was 17 years old in a very toxic relationship with the first love of my life. And I was trying to break up with him, and he would always threaten to kill himself or to kill me. And it was a really challenging situation. And he started to throw out my birth control pills and force me to be intimate with him. And I ended up getting pregnant at 17 years old. And I had an abortion. Wow. It was really, really challenging. And, I lived in a small town where it wasn't accepted, and I had to go to this super sketchy little clinic, and there was a lot of shame and guilt, and it was a very, very challenging time. And I held on to that for a really long time. I really let myself be a victim. I let myself be depressed. I beat myself up over it. I considered myself as a murderer. I was Catholic, and just so much. And I recognized that my hatred outwards, my hatred to myself and for this happening, and to God for letting it happen, that contributed a lot to me becoming very, very sick. And I had the opportunity to say, okay, well, I can perpetuate this for the rest of my life, or I could take it as an opportunity. That happening allowed me to get out of my relationship. That was the catalyst for me to move forward in my life. That allowed me to empathize so deeply and to see abortion in a different way than I had used to see it. It allowed me to connect with other women who went through these similar situations. And it truly allowed me to understand what it was to forgive, to be able to forgive my old partner, to be able to forgive myself, to be able to forgive God, and to understand that, wow, at some level, like, this was a gift for me, and this was here for my greater joy in the future, because I get to now be empowered in understanding what it is to go through this and to help other people through this. And when I gave myself and the world the gift of my forgiveness, it healed so much within me, from all of my male relationships, with my relationship with my father. Like, it changed everything in my life. And so I fully understand what it is to feel like a victim. I understand what it is to be abused, and I understand what it is to overcome that. And there's nothing more precious that we can do for ourselves than changing the role and rewriting the script from victim to victor, and becoming the heroes and the heroines of our own lives.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share such a powerful part of your own life and challenging part of your own life. That's so inspiring.
Yeah, thanks for holding space for that.
My pleasure. So when we were talking, actually before, via email before we jumped on today, one of the things that you mentioned as a topic that you would be interested in sort of talking about was, and it jumped out at me, and I'm curious. I'd love to just hear what this means to you and what it's all about. Applied emergence theory. That just sounds very intriguing to me. What is applied emergence theory?
Okay, so when the great old philosophers were trying to come up with the philosophy to encompass everything, like the theory of everything, the equation for everything, Einstein and a whole bunch of other philosophers were coming up with string theory and the theory of relativity and all of these different theories. And string theory was what was accepted to be the theory of everything for quite a while, but there were a lot of holes, and now it's been proven to be wrong. And the new theory that is scientifically and mathematically, physically appropriate to understand our entire universe is called emergence theory. Okay. And I'm going to shout out to Quantum Gravity Research Center for their brilliant humans that have been working on this theory and come up with this theory. And it encompasses everything from the crystalline grid to 8th dimension to the golden ratio, alchemy, all of it. It's all in this theory. This
sounds like a good future guest, whoever is behind this organization.
Yeah, and I would love to connect with them, actually. So let's just make that happen.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, and so emergence theory being the theory of everything, and it encompasses the meta, it encompasses the mesa, it encompasses all of quantum theory, which is the theory of energy. It explains light and time and our 3D reality, which is a projection from our 8D reality. it explains everything, why we're pixelated, like all of it. And so taking emergence theory and applying it to our lives. So applied emergence theory. And where I go with that is identifying the meta, so the beyond, the all-encompassing, recognizing that we're just manifestations of source and we are all one, and then the mesa. So mesa being going within, the opposite of meta, like going within to the core of who we are and identifying our identity, which is just a construct. It's not real. We're not who we are. We just are who we think we are and who we are in this moment, which can always change. And encompassing all of the alchemical formulas of earth, air, fire, water, mercury, salt, sulfur being mind, body, spirit, and taking that and understanding all of these different constructs and then applying them to our lives, and which is essentially alchemy.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's a lot. It's not something that you can just kind of sit down with in a minute, but going through the different principles of emergence theory and then recognizing how on the greater scale, how they explain everything right down to like the smallest particle, how they can explain a little grain of sand and how it's all the same. So within, so without, as above, so below. Right.
You mentioned, that's quite a lot to ponder. You mentioned pulling in from 8D, and that's a topic that you hear a lot about. Like, we're moving into 5D, and these different dimensions, right? And we're in the third dimension, and so I'd love to hear your take on that. What is going on there? Because you hear some different things, and I think for a lot of people, it's a somewhat confusing idea and topic.
Yeah, so let's just go down to math. Okay, so what is a dimension? We're like, we're living in 3D, 5 dimension. Well, a dimension is like a thick square on a piece of paper, like length times width. Those are dimensions. Okay.
Yep.
So on a piece of paper, when we draw a square, there's length, or a line even is just length, and then when we add in height, that's 2D. So there's 2 dimensions that we're measuring. And then when we make a cube, well, now there's like width, which brings in, another dimension.
Depth.
And so I actually don't think we're living in a 3D world. I think we're living in a 4D world, but we only understand it by looking at grid paper, which would only show there's 3 dimensions. And
would you say the 4th dimension then would be like time, adding time to the whole equation?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we are, what is reality anyways? Reality is just energy bouncing around in this big old crystalline grid, which is the everything of everything. And it's just light and reflections, and we can go so deep into this. But yeah, the thing is that we understand, and where do we understand? We draw things on paper and on computers, and we're even, we're trying to take the universe and understand it by different blocks. But when we create something on a piece of paper or on a block or a graph, it's not in the dimension of reality. It's like a smaller dimension. And so it can't actually be a proper representation of us. It's lacking that extra dimension. And so in quantum theory, or in emergence theory, they explain that, all of reality is actually this tetrahedron, and it's just being projected onto our physical reality, which is why it seems like it's 3D, but it actually isn't.
Right. Yeah. And so what is your take on like some of the higher dimensions, 5D and 8D, and, how do you perceive and grapple with those concepts?
Those concepts I feel are really new age, and I don't know that most people don't actually know what that means.
Right.
But I think if we tap into what 8D means, it means that it's representing of all of source. It's representing that we are but just a physical manifestation of something that's much greater, that's more all-encompassing, and that we're just kind of like a reflection of those. And so in those different dimensions, things like the shadow aspects are not as prevalent. So, 5D is supposed to be known as like unconditional love, and some of these like higher frequencies, and the transmutation of those shadows, like guilt, shame, blame, anger, that they don't necessarily exist in the quantum tetrahedron 8th dimension, 12th dimension, because they don't have a shadow projected. Yeah, the sun doesn't have a shadow. Shadows just come from something being in between the sun and something else.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. And of course, in these lower dimensions, it's I've heard it said this is the realm of duality, where we're supposed to have, you have night and day and male and female and, up and down. And, it's like good and evil. It's or evil and live spelled backwards. It's like so as you sort of ascend up the dimensional scale, all of that merges into one thing that is love.
Exactly. Love and light, right? Just being frequency and vibration. That's truly what we are. And yet, how could we recognize what we were unless we separated from ourselves to see ourselves? Like, how would you ever know what you look like if there were no mirrors or no cameras, nothing to reflect you? You would never be able to see yourself unless there was something to reflect. And even that in itself, what is a picture? A picture is a flash coming out in a mirror, light capturing that reflection, showing to you a little slice of time. Like, a picture is so interesting to think it's time captured, right? So that's a dimension. Okay, so if we are 3D, we take out the dimension of time, that's a picture, 2D.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
So
very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Here we are. It's the second day of 2019 as we record. This will come out, a few weeks after, but we're fresh off the boat into 2019. What do you think is, what do you see coming? What do you think the world needs more of in this new year?
Okay, so in talking about the energies of contraction and expansion, we have gone through the last several years a period of decentralization, right? Decentralized banking systems, decentralized education systems, decentralized transportation, decentralized accommodation. Everything is becoming decentralized. Even in our branding, it's the age of the influencer. We're all individuals again. And that's been interesting. It's been very expansive. And now resources are running drier. Like we are potentially on the cusp of a financial crisis again, being very imminent. And we're seeing the wells running a little bit more dry, and resources as well. There's a lot going on in the political sphere. And so I'm believing, I feel, and what I see is that what we need is actually to centralize again in a different way. Where it's not a monopolization, but more returning to communities and returning to tribes and returning to pooled resources and coming together as a collective, as collectives, to be more efficient in the way that we operate and we utilize the world's resources and the way that we produce and the way that we relate to ourselves. Rather than being the ultimate consumers and parasites of the planet, we really need to be the contributors and the constructors of a planet that will be sustainable and regenerative. Yeah.
Being intentional instead of, sort of just going through unconsciously consuming. And, imagine if everyone thought of it in that way, like, how do I contribute as opposed to what can I get,
Yeah. Contribution over consumption is something I've been really thinking about. Like, how am I contributing rather than just consuming? Personally in my own home, in my own life, and then as a collective. And you mentioned the mastermind, the Freedom Culture Superhero Academy mastermind, and that's really what we are doing and building and being is a community, a tribe where we come together and co-create and collaborate and share and come up with the solutions for some of the world's biggest challenges, and recognizing that we can't do any of this alone, or we can, and it's not very easy, and so how can we really come together and centralize our genius and our energy and our heart space and our resources to make the biggest impact possible with the biggest ripple of impact, and return on investment as well. Because there's not really going to be, I don't believe, another option. The world is abundant, yes, and it's also quite finite in its resources. And so we do need to be looking in the future and making decisions now that affect that future.
Yeah. Absolutely. And of course you have a lot of people out there who are like, oh, it's too late for us, doom and gloom kind of thing. And meanwhile, there's so many people coming online, waking up. And, I have contact all the time from people who are like, oh my gosh, Brandon, 3 months ago, I was in this place. And, in the case, then the reason a lot of times they're reaching out to me is like maybe my show was a catalyst to them, or they found it and it was, there with them on their journey to kind of birthing into the next greatest and grandest version of themselves. And so I'm seeing it firsthand a lot of times how many people who are like, my life is completely upside down and my perspective is so expanded from where it was 3 months ago or 6 months ago. And so to me, being the eternal optimist, I see that and think, okay, people are waking up, people are coming online faster and faster and in larger numbers. And I believe, it's not too late to turn the ship around, so to speak.
I love that you said that. And one of the key things of reality alchemy or reality architecture is the fact that reality is a complex system of polarized feedback. And so there's negative feedback, which creates a negative feedback loop, or there's the positive feedback that creates a positive feedback loop. And they're both energetics, like a spiraling of energetics. And so if we decide that our perspective of reality will be one of negativity, that is the energetic that we're pushing forward, and that is what we'll see, and that is what we'll experience. And when we experience that place of scarcity, it's too late. Well, how does scarcity compensate for itself? By over-consuming, right? But by going the opposite direction. And so if we see, oh wow, there is enough for everybody, I can share. I don't need to hoard and consume and maximize all of the things that I do. Then we have a very different reality that will be produced by that. And so recognizing that positivity and abundance in that mindset, while also recognizing like to only consume what we need and to be a contributor, which is another positive, right? To contribute, that changes the infrastructure of reality greatly. And so to all the positive headers out there, really recognizing that positivity and our own charge, like our own energetic and what we push forward does get to be a practice and a choice, and realigning and retuning our own energy, our own vibration and our frequency to positivity and to abundance just contributes to a much greater result for ourselves and our world.
Yeah. And, then you get into this whole idea of, you step into your own, you're sort of the lead actor and director in your own private universe, YO universe. And there's these infinite timelines where every possibility plays out. And so, aligning your own, vibrational field sort of determines which version of, alternate timelines you step into. And so, to me, that's such a fascinating topic and idea, because a lot of people get this idea that there's this one fixed reality and earth, and there's not enough room for me to be great and for me to be a leader or me to, but when you start taking into account this idea that you are, in your own private universe, and you're literally there's infinite versions and timelines, this gets pretty, pretty deep and heady, but that's how I view my reality, as like, there's plenty of room because there's infinite timelines, and I can easily step into a version where, this avatar, Brandon Beecham, steps into a timeline where he sees an earth that is healed in the nick of time, and we turn this boat around, and I get to step into the world stage as a shining light and example. And alternatively, let's say there's a version of this avatar that got into a negative feedback loop or spiral, and all is lost, and I'm not good enough, and and then so there's an option for a whole different timeline that I could step into that I'm not opting to, but it exists as a potentiality. And when you start understanding, and looking at it from that viewpoint, to me, it's so empowering to realize the abundance of that perspective. And
to be able to achieve that, to be able to really create that, there has to be that fundamental belief that you are truly the alchemist, that you are truly the creator, that you are a manifestation of all of consciousness. And through your belief and your energy, you are collapsing source consciousness and pulling it into your own reality through manifestation. Without that belief, it's very challenging because it's like, oh, well, how could I be? I couldn't actually be the creator. A lot of people think, well, that's not true for me. And I'm like, well, that belief is what makes it not true for you. So for anyone listening that thinks like, oh, well, okay, this is just too woo-woo, there's no way that it could happen, I would invite anyone to just try it on, even if just for a month. Like just really decide, like, what can you lose? You know, I'm really going to try for 1 month to truly believe that I am God in my life, and that anything I really believe is possible and will manifest. And then to be very aware when a diminisher comes in, like perfectionism or overanalysis or doubt or fear. Oh, wow. Okay. Fear. Okay. That doesn't belong here if I'm God. Okay. Push that aside and then realign with I am God and see what happens. You know, I do this. I invite many of the people I work with to do this, and they freak out. They totally lose their mind, freak out. They're like, I can't believe it. I'm like, well, if you're God, you can believe it because you created it. And they're like, oh, wow, I did create this. Oh, my gosh. And so it's really fun to play with this. And yet it just takes that belief and that faith and the knowingness. And you can practice the knowingness. Start to, you'll convince yourself of the knowingness when you see the results, and the results will happen because this is the way it works.
It absolutely, you know, I love the way you break that down. I say it in a very similar way all the time. It's like, just explore these ideas with an open mind, get playful with, you know, the possibilities, and buckle up your seatbelt, because if you are doing that and you're doing that with, you know, a playful, open heart to the idea that all of this is actually the way reality works and the ultimate nature of reality is structured, it's like it's shown to you, right? It's like you will see. It will start to. I mean, we could spend all day, and of course, the listeners who've been listening for the 800 plus episodes as of the time of this recording, they've heard a lot of magical stories and synchronicity and things that unfold. You know that the amount of synchronicity and magic in my life at this point. It's like it just non-stop unfolding and just gets better and better and better. And, you know, it's the proof to me is in, you know, the reality that I'm living, the life that I'm living, and how it just continues to get more and more magical. And, you know, so I definitely second your challenge to the people to, you know, go down this road, play with these concepts with an open mind, and buckle up your seatbelt.
I'm gonna not even say the challenge to the people. I'm like eliminating the word challenge. I challenge you. I'm like, I invite you.
I like that. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, this is like this 30-day commitment that you make to yourself. That using language so that we're not even implanting that it's going to be challenging. There's a
fight. Right. Yeah. Thank you for that adjustment, because yes, I agree with you fully on invite is much better than challenge.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Speaking of inviting, I'd like to invite you to share a story. Speaking of magic and invitations, I'd like to invite you to share a story of synchronicity, magic, you know, a positive paranormal story, perhaps, you know, serendipity, something. I love a good story like that. And so do the listeners. And curious if you have something up your sleeve you'd care to share.
Sure. Well, I'll stay on the theme since I already started to allude about the mastermind and about Marcangelo and about our past lives. So I'll share the story of how, you know, I came to be one of the co-founders of the Freedom Culture Mastermind and a teacher at Superhero Academy. My family's originally one of my grandparents is originally from Norway, so I'm part Viking in my blood. And a few years ago, people kept mentioning this Valhalla movement in Montreal, Valhalla. And I hadn't heard of it and didn't think anything of it. And then people started to mention Marcangelo to me. And we finally connected, and it turns out that we were born in the same hospital, 2 weeks apart, grew up in the same town, traveled all around for years, in Costa Rica at the same time, Austin at the same time. We connected while we were both in Colorado, an hour away from each other. And, you know, he asked me to go to the mastermind and go to Envision, but I said, no, I was moving to Colorado. But the plans for Colorado fell through. I ended up getting asked to work at Envision. I ended up, you know, he told me I had to go to Mastermind, so I went there. And when we met, when we first truly connected, I saw our past lives together, which I had never seen a past life ever before. But we connected, and I saw us leading a war together as Vikings. And it instantly connected me to him on this way I'd never felt, like full visceral, like full downloaded stomach, like belly button to belly button, like magnetic pull. And everything inside of my DNA was activated in a new way. And I was just magnetized to him. And then, you know, he is the founder of Valhalla, which is in Montreal, in my hometown. And we ended up deciding to work together and to grow the mastermind and to collaborate and to become we ended up being partners as well. And it was just so interesting from that moment, how everything unfolded into that, like being pulled back to Montreal to build Valhalla, and then all of the connections and how it came through, going to my ayahuasca ceremony and seeing that we built this movement in our past lifetime as well, and how that's unfolding, and how that brought me again to Costa Rica, to meeting you, and all of the different synchronicities, and recognizing, just watching the unfolding, and and how that manifested from me trusting to follow where I was being guided, trusting in the unfolding, trusting to say yes to those breadcrumbs of bliss that are just falling out of the sky, and recognizing the magic in it. And then, you know, when doing ceremonies, like even psilocybin or ayahuasca or whatnot, recognizing that, oh, this has already been written. This is in the past, and seeing this is the future, and I'm just living out this timeline. And it's so magical and weird, and synchronicities every day, and you just like it's never fails to surprise me, and yet not surprise me at all.
Wow, I love that. And, you know, perhaps in addition to being elephants together, we were Vikings as well, because I found out recently that I have Viking ancestry roots as well. And so, perhaps this is just enough, you know, and that's what they say as you continue to attract in those, you know, one of my favorite soul shares early on, you know, a couple of years ago, is Dr. Eben Alexander. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or his story, but he basically is a Harvard neurosurgeon who, expert on the brain. And of course, as synchronicity would have it, he got a rare form of meningitis that destroyed it. He went from one day being fine to the next day in a coma. Brain is being, essentially eaten alive by meningitis. After 7 days in a coma, they're like, his neocortex, which would create hallucination and all those sorts of things, as he talks about, destroyed. Brain is fried. The doctors say, sorry, family, you're going to have to pull the plug. We recommend you pulling the plug. There's just nothing left, and they pull the plug, and he miraculously comes back. All he remembers at first is his time on the other side and all the things he was shown about the structure of reality and how it works. And, his book got a lot of press and stuff because of who he was, this Harvard neurosurgeon, Oprah, had him on and everything like that. And he basically, that's what he said, is how we reincarnate oftentimes is in these soul families, we have these groups that we're closely connected to, and you continue to show up in each other's stories over many lifetimes, playing different roles, as you and Mark Angelo's story, we were king and queen, we were Vikings, we were elephants, we were, you keep coming back with like the same sort of tribe to, over a long period of time to grow. And I've also been reading this book recently, A Journey of Souls, by Michael Newton. And I read it many, many years ago, decade plus ago, and I picked it up again, and it's lifetime between lives, and it's the same kind of thing. Hey, you have these sort of pods that you're a part of, and you play this game into physical reality over eons, and you kind of do it with the same tribe oftentimes. And I think that's just such a fascinating, beautiful story, and it brings such an exciting idea to people that you really feel a strong connection with, in this life. It's like, what have we done together before, and then you have people who are actually remembering these sorts of things. I'm going to have a friend on in the future, Shelby, who is incredible. I mean, she is fascinating, Sam. She has waking lucid dreams, like her life, every night she'd lucid dreams like it's as intense and as real as this. And it's actually merging into my daily life where all of a sudden the scene will change in front of me. Like she's like, gave an example the other day. I probably should let her, she's got many stories, but she said, example of how it merges even now into other lifetimes. I was sitting at the piano. I don't play piano. I saw this ring on the counter. It instantly triggered me back to the 1800s when I was this woman. I could see by her dress and everything, that, I think it was like the 1800s, and she was very sad because her husband had just left her, and she's there playing the piano. I'm sitting at the piano in this life. She's sitting at the piano in the 1800s playing this song sad about her husband that left her. And she said, I started playing the song. I don't even play piano, but I started playing the same song she was playing through me. And it's like, what? Like, just like incredible how these like things are all coming together and merging. And
the world is weird. We live in a weird world, and even like when we hear about these kind of stories, for me, I was always skeptical. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. It doesn't make sense. Yep. But now as I'm having these experiences and having, I can look at someone and I can hear their thoughts a lot of times, or I can feel their feelings. And I didn't even believe that was possible. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? Opening up to these different things and recognizing that all the crazy people that have their crazy stories, it's all real.
Yep.
Most of it, or if it's so real for them. And opening up to the world is not what we believed that it was. It is infinitely more magical and more unreal, and yet so very real when we tap into just how real that is.
Yeah. It's like, she went on to say, like, you talked about looking at someone or picking up. She's like, she's always had trouble looking people in the eyes because if she stares, and she's just started to get the courage to do it recently, because when she stares into someone's eyes, she'll start seeing like all kinds of things about them and their lifetimes and past lifetimes. And, and she was telling me the other night, and she's pretty shy about it all. And I'm like coaxing it out of her, and I'm going to bring her on the show, and we're going to have massive story time, because she's like, Brandon, I have, I could tell you 1,000 stories, full recollection of other lives and things. Like it never stops. I can't, it's like, she's like, I start calling her Akasha. I'm like, you're like the living Akashic records. Like she just, it's just fascinating. And
I'd
just
love to do a biofeedback brain map of her, like a EEG of her brain. That'd be so interesting to see just what lights up.
That's a good idea.
That's really cool. I love biohacking. I really like getting nerdy with technology and seeing how we can look into the biodynamics of the human body. I wonder.
Yeah,
cool.
well, maybe we can make that happen. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll have to make that happen. That's a wonderful idea. Recently they started looking at the brain when using psilocybin or LSD or whatever, and seeing the actual brain lit up when you see it. Here's normal, and here it is on, psilocybin, and it's like, holy smokes, like all these areas are lit up and connected that typically aren't. And of course, that's a reflection of the connectedness people are oftentimes feeling using these medicines.
The physiology of it, working with psilocybin, it actually creates new neural networks. It synthesizes new brain structures. It increases the capacity for wiring and firing within the brain. Yeah. And it, even if you look at mushrooms like underneath the earth, they are the neural network. They are the brain of the earth, connecting all of the surface, and they're able to telecommunicate, across massive distances. And so, our brain is similar, and we are nature, we are of the earth. And so using things like that help to restructure our own neurochemistry, which has been degraded from our modern lifestyle, it's not surprising that it has that effect.
Indeed. So fascinating. Wow. This has been such a cool soul share. Like, I've so enjoyed connecting with you again, Sam. And, what I'd like to ask you as we kind of wind down here is, what is, for those who want to connect with you, what would be the best way to do that?
So the best way would be probably through social media. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm doing a little bit of a rebrand. I had a naturopathy practice, which was called Real Life But Better. And now I'm just moving into more of the alchemical type of medicine. So even my website, it will be changing. It'll probably just be SamanthaLotus.com. yes, you can connect with me there. For right now, it's realifebetter.com, but then it'll be samanthalotus.com.
Gotcha. Okay. And then I know that you, have coaching services and things like that you offer, of course, being an integral part of the Superhero Academy. If people wanted to connect on those levels, possibly in a coaching, situation. And I know you had mentioned that you're pretty booked up now at this time as of this recording, but in the future, you have some pretty exciting things developing. And of course, we also talked about the Superhero Academy, which I was a part of last year, as I mentioned, where we met and just had the most epic time. If people are interested in getting involved on either of those, two avenues of connecting with you, is that what would be the best way for them to do that?
Absolutely. So some of the offerings would be, if somebody wants to become the alchemist of their own reality, I do lifestyle alchemy coaching. I also have a business program for helping light workers and healers and coaches step into their mission on the planet, which is called Business Alchemy. And then if you have heard of our Superhero Academy Mastermind or Envision Festival and you want to be a part of it, that's coming up in February. And so there's definitely opportunity to join our camp. If you're a world game changer and you want to contribute, you could join our mastermind. You can join in what we're doing with Superhero Academy. So the best way would be to connect with me on social media and let me know that you heard about me from the Positive Head podcast, because this is something that's private. It's not open to the public. Most of what we're doing. And so if you let me know that this is how you found me, you'll get some kind of great discount or a freebie or something added, and let Brandon know that you connected through us. And yeah, it'd be great to connect with anyone listening here.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty epic to throw out there, because I know the Superhero Academy, it is, invite only. And for those of you who, feel really, really called and you feel like you're ready for your cape, right? you can also go, and I just pulled it up here. You can go and look back at episode 633. And of course, if you go to positivehead.com and you search on the full archive isn't on all the platforms. Like iTunes, I think cuts off some of the older episodes and things, but most of them, 633 isn't that long ago. But if you go to positivehead.com, for sure you can search just the number 633 or superhero, all one word, and it'll pull up that episode where I report back from Superhero Academy and Mastermind and Envision Festival. I talk all about it, in more detail what goes on there. And then a few weeks after that, episode 657 is with Mark Angelo, where you can, Sam's partner, who the Viking king and philanthropreneur, amazing master of organization behind Superhero Academy, and that was episode 657. So you can hear my chat with him as well, and that'll give you more insight into that whole experience. Yeah,
and my online course just came out. It's coming up this week on superheroacademy.net, and then the mastermind is freedomculture.org. And you can find out all about that, from all of those links, which, we'll probably list somewhere. But, lots of good stuff going on. And we'd love to have anyone else that's in alignment with what we're doing and wants to contribute to the evolution of the planet. There's definitely room for you.
Yeah, I talked to David recently about possibly coming back and this year, and I really want to. And I have a whole lot going on in my business professional life, so I don't know. It's up in the air for me as of this moment, and it's time is certainly ticking. But if I'm going to make it back, but I certainly, whether I do or don't, I will definitely be there in spirit, because I truly, one of the most incredible experiences of my life was spending time there last year and connecting. And out of that, there's been so many, including this relationship with you. I mean, so many incredible, close, it was like superhero camp, and like, oh my gosh, we're, here we are all, speaking of souls coming back together who are part of the same soul family. Oh, wow. All these, ancient friends coming back together to create and, reconnect to make magic yet again in this particular timeline and lifetime is, it's hard to have an experience more rewarding than that in my experience.
I'm so glad. And I'm just going to plant the seed that I see you there this year. And I feel like, your traveling show, we could set it up, get a booth going, really make some magic. The evolution of the event is definitely a pretty potent one. And you are such a key role and player in what we're building. And so I'm just going to say that you're going to be there and cast that out to the universe.
Well, you're hard to say no to, Sam. I know that. So I am so glad I said yes to this soul share and connecting with you here today. And I look forward to connecting again in 3D or 4D or whatever the heck's going on here in this D. Life. Infinite D, yes. I look forward to connecting with you there again soon. And I do have one last question I'd like to leave you with. And that question is this. In 60 seconds or less, what is the meaning of life according to Samantha Lotus?
To find the meaning that it has for you and to live it irreverently and passionately and to have a lot of fun doing it.
Yes. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for being. You are such a bright, shining light, Sam. I so appreciate you. And until next time, journey well.
I appreciate you and I love you so much. And I have infinite gratitude for you. And I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. Before we sign off, I wanted to let you all know that we have finally created the Game with the Universe on our website, where you can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time by doing this manually. But now, if you go to positivehead.com/YO universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and grandest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to engage and invite friends, family, people on social media to check out the podcast as well. So be sure to check out positivehead.com/YOUNIVERSE and be sure to tell all your friends so they can play a game with the universe, which also helps the show to reach new people, which I greatly appreciate. And as a quick reminder, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them every day. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I can't stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so, and I'm sincerely excited to share it with all of you. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.